The dying light of dusk painted the dirt road crimson, as Tabitha Holloway trudged toward the white steeple that cut sharply against the darkening sky, one hand supporting her aching back, the other resting protectively over the swell of her belly. 5 months along now. There was no hiding her condition anymore, especially in a town as small as Watsonville, California, where gossip traveled faster than the stagecoach that passed through twice weekly. It was 1875, and being an unwed mother to be meant becoming an outcast, something Tabitha had learned painfully over recent weeks as neighbors who once greeted her warmly now crossed the street to avoid her path. But worst of all was the weight of her own mother's disappointment, the slap that had stung her cheek when she'd finally admitted the truth, and the cold words that followed. "The church will know what to do with you." Tabitha paused at the church steps, gathering courage. Reverend Whitmore had always seemed a kind man, stern but fair. Perhaps he would understand that the father of her child, a smooth-talking cattle buyer passing through, had promised marriage before disappearing without a trace, leaving her alone with the consequences of believing his lies. Drawing a deep breath, she climbed the steps. The heavy wooden door creaked as she pushed it open, and several heads turned. A small group had gathered for Wednesday evening prayer meeting, mostly the town's most devoted matrons, their eyes widening at the sight of her. "Miss Holloway." Reverend Whitmore's voice echoed in the quiet sanctuary as he approached from the pulpit. His bushy eyebrows drew together over deep-set eyes. "I had not expected to see you here." Tabitha clutched her shawl tighter, feeling every pair of eyes in the room drilling into her. "I need to speak with you, Reverend. My mother said—" "I think it best we talk privately," he interrupted, gesturing toward his office. The whispers followed her down the aisle. Once behind the closed door, the Reverend did not invite her to sit. He stood, Bible clutched in his hands, his gaze traveling once to her protruding middle before fixing firmly on her face. "Your mother has already spoken to me about your situation," he said. "I understand you wish for the church's assistance." "I don't know where else to turn," Tabitha admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My mother says I can't stay with her anymore. The shame is too great, she says." The Reverend's expression softened slightly, but his words remained firm. "The church in Sacramento runs a home for fallen women. They can take you in until your time comes, and arrangements can be made for the child afterward." Tabitha's hand flew protectively to her belly. "Arrangements. A good Christian family would be found. The child would be raised properly, and you could return to Watsonville with a chance to start anew, having atoned for your sin." Her heart pounded against her ribs. "You want me to give away my baby? It would be best for all concerned. Surely you understand that a child needs a proper family, a mother and a father bound in holy matrimony." He set the Bible on his desk. "The stage for Sacramento leaves Friday morning. I'll write to Sister Agnes tonight. But I don't want to miss Holloway." His tone hardened. "This church has always stood for moral righteousness. We cannot condone sin, but we can offer a path to redemption. This is that path." He moved toward the door. "I suggest you spend tomorrow in prayer and preparation. The Women's Auxiliary can take up a collection for your fare." "I won't give up my baby," Tabitha said, her voice stronger now, though tears threatened. The Reverend's face flushed with color. "Then I'm afraid the church cannot help you. We will not enable further sin by allowing an unwed mother to flaunt God's law in our community." "Reverend, please, the door to salvation remains open to you, Miss Holloway, but only if you're willing to accept guidance. Otherwise—" He opened the office door, a clear dismissal. "I must attend to those who came here for prayer." Tabitha walked out with as much dignity as she could muster, aware of the stares that followed her through the sanctuary. Outside, She leaned against the church wall, letting tears fall freely in the darkness. Night had fully descended now, and she faced a long walk back to a home where she was no longer welcome. "Got nowhere to go, miss," the voice startled her. A tall figure stood at the bottom of the steps, hat in hand. In the moonlight, she could make out the silhouette of a man, his shoulders broad beneath a trail-worn coat. "I'm fine," she answered automatically, wiping at her tears. The stranger took a step closer, and she could see him more clearly, a man perhaps 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at the collar. His eyes, catching the light from the church windows, seemed kind. "Begging your pardon, but you don't look fine," he said. "Name's Isaac Kincaid. I couldn't help overhearing some of what happened in there." Tabitha stiffened. "Come to judge me too, Mr. Kincaid," he shook his head. "No, madam, not my place to judge anyone." "Then what do you want?" "Nothing." He shifted his weight from one foot to another. "Just thought you might need help. I've got a place about 5 miles outside town. It's not much, but my door is always open to someone in need." Tabitha gave a bitter laugh. "You don't know me, sir. Why would you make such an offer?" "Been in tough spots myself," he answered simply. "And my mother raised me to help folks when I can." She studied him skeptically. Men's offers of help had led to her current predicament. "I don't need charity." "Not offering charity. Got a small ranch that needs tending. Could use help with cooking and keeping house. There's a cabin on the property where the old ranch hand used to stay. It's yours if you want it, in exchange for honest work, when your time comes." He glanced at her belly. "Well, we'll figure that out then. Why would you do this for a stranger?" Isaac put his hat back on, adjusting it thoughtfully. "Lost my wife 2 years back. Know what it's like to feel alone in this world." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Here's where to find me if you change your mind. I'll be heading back at first light." Tabitha hesitated, then took the paper. "Thank you, but no need to decide now," he said. "Offer stands." With a respectful nod, he turned and walked toward the livery stable at the end of the street. Clutching the paper, Tabitha watched him go, torn between desperation and caution. Her mother's house awaited, but only for one more night. Then where? The town's only boarding house wouldn't take in a woman in her condition. No respectable business would hire her. With a deep breath, she tucked the paper into her pocket and headed home, each step heavy with the weight of decisions to be made before morning light. Tabitha arrived home to find her mother waiting, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Martha Holloway had once been considered a beauty in Watsonville, but years of hard work and harder disappointments had carved deep lines around her mouth and eyes. "Well," Martha demanded as Tabitha closed the door behind her. "The Reverend suggested a home for fallen women in Sacramento," Tabitha said, removing her shawl. "They would take my baby and give it to someone else." "That's for the best," her mother nodded firmly. "You can come back afterward and put this shameful business behind you." Tabitha's hands trembled as she hung her shawl on the peg. "I won't give up my child, Mother," Martha's face hardened. "Then where will you go? No one in this town will take you in. No one will employ an unwed mother." "Someone might," Tabitha said quietly, thinking of the stranger's offer. "Who?" Martha demanded. "A rancher. He offered me work and a place to stay." "What rancher? I know everyone within 20 miles of Watsonville." "His name is Isaac Kincaid." Martha's eyes widened. "The widower from Twin Pines Valley." "Tabitha, you cannot be serious. A single man." "You'd be jumping from one scandal into another." He mentioned a separate cabin. "It would be proper." "Proper?" Martha's laugh was harsh. "Nothing about your situation is proper, and now you'd compound your sin by living under a man's protection without the sanctity of marriage." "I didn't raise you to be she stopped herself. but the unspoken word hung in the air between them. "A what, mother?" Tabitha challenged, her voice rising despite herself. "A fallen woman. Is that what I am to you now? Not your daughter anymore, just a stain on your good name." Martha turned away. "I don't recognize you anymore. The daughter I raised would never have gotten herself into such a predicament. The daughter you raised trusted a man who lied. I made a mistake, but this baby is innocent. You made your bed, Tabitha. Now you must lie in it." Martha moved toward the stairs. "I expect you gone by tomorrow evening. I've already told the ladies at the sewing circle that you're going to Sacramento." Alone in the kitchen, Tabitha sank into a chair, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The baby kicked, a flutter of movement that still surprised her each time. 5 months along, and already she loved this child more than she'd thought possible. "We'll be all right," she whispered, though uncertainty gripped her. Could she trust Isaac Kincaid? The alternative seemed worse: a strange home in Sacramento, her baby taken from her arms, a lifetime of regret. She reached into her pocket and unfolded the paper he'd given her. In a neat, schooled hand was written, "Twin Pines Ranch. Follow the north road past Miller's Creek, then east at the Split Oak. Look for the windmill." By midnight her decision was made. She would leave before dawn, before her mother woke. She packed what little she owned: 2 dresses, undergarments, her mother's old brush and hand mirror, the quilt her grandmother had made. In her reticule, she placed the last of her savings, barely enough for a month's room and board, had any establishment been willing to take her. Sleep came fitfully, dawn arriving too soon yet not soon enough. Tabitha rose quietly, dressed, and left a note on the kitchen table. 3 simple lines. "I must make my own way. I will write when I can. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you." The early morning air was crisp with the promise of autumn as she walked through the sleeping town. At the edge of Watsonville, she paused, looking back at the only home she'd ever known. 22 years of memories, good and bad, lay behind her. Ahead was only uncertainty. "Ready or not," she whispered to her unborn child, adjusting her small pack, "we're starting anew." The north road stretched before her, and she began to walk. The morning sun climbed higher as Tabitha followed the dusty road, her pace slowing as the miles wore on. She'd never walked so far before, and the weight she carried made each step a little more difficult than the last. By the time she reached Miller's Creek, sweat dampened her collar despite the cool air. She rested on a fallen log beside the shallow creek, removing her shoes to soak her aching feet in the cold water. 4 miles, perhaps, she'd come. How many more to go? The paper had said to look for the Split Oak, but how far past the creek was that? As she sat pondering, the sound of hoofbeats approached from behind. Hastily, she pulled her feet from the water and reached for her shoes, but before she could put them on, a rider appeared around the bend. The sun silhouetted him against the sky, but she recognized the broad shoulders and the way he sat his horse, Isaac Kincaid. He reined in when he saw her. "Miss Holloway, Mr. Kincaid," she acknowledged, embarrassed to be caught barefoot. He dismounted in one fluid motion, leading his horse closer. It was a sturdy bay gelding with a white blaze down its face. "Didn't expect to find you out here so early." "I decided to accept your offer," she said, pulling on her shoes. "If it still stands." "It does." He glanced at her small pack, then back to town. "You came on foot, all this way." "I don't have a horse." A frown crossed his face. "You shouldn't be walking in your condition, not this far." He extended a hand to help her up. "Come on, Ranger here can carry us both back to the ranch." Tabitha hesitated. "I can walk. It's another 3 miles to the Split Oak, then 2 more to my place. Please let me help you." After a moment she nodded and took his hand. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her to her feet. Then, to her surprise, he lifted her small pack as if it weighed nothing. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the horse. At her nod, he secured her pack behind the saddle, then helped her mount. She settled awkwardly, unused to riding astride, especially in her condition. Isaac swung up behind her, his arms creating a protective circle as he took the reins. "Hold on to the saddle horn," he advised, and then they were moving. The rhythm of the horse's gait was smoother than she expected, but still she found herself tense, aware of the man behind her, a virtual stranger with whom she was entrusting her future. Was she being foolish again, too trusting of a man's seemingly kind offer? "May I ask what changed your mind?" Isaac's voice came from just above her right ear. "My mother made it clear I couldn't stay," Tabitha answered, watching the countryside pass. "And I won't give up my baby." He was quiet for a moment. "The church folks giving you trouble? They wanted me to go to Sacramento, to a home for—" She couldn't bring herself to say the words. "I understand," he said, and she was grateful he didn't press further. "Well, no one will trouble you at my place. It's quiet, mostly just me and the cattle. Nearest neighbor's the widow Jenkins, about a mile east. She's good people. Keeps to herself, doesn't judge." The mention of a respectable female neighbor eased some of Tabitha's concern. "Does she know about your offer to me?" "No, madam, but she'll understand. Lost her husband in '68. Had to make her own way with 3 young uns. She knows life isn't always neat and tidy." They rode in silence for a while, crossing the creek and continuing north until they reached a massive oak tree that had split down the middle, forming 2 distinct trunks from the same base. "Split oak," Isaac announced, turning the horse eastward onto a narrower trail. The landscape changed subtly, the flat grazing land giving way to gentle hills dotted with pine trees. After another half-hour they crested a rise, and Tabitha caught her first glimpse of Twin Pines Ranch. It was smaller than she'd imagined, a modest main house built of sturdy logs, a barn, a corral with several horses, and a windmill that turned lazily in the breeze. Off to one side, perhaps 100 yards from the main house, stood a small cabin. "It's not much," Isaac said, almost apologetically. "But the land's good. 20 head of cattle, 6 horses. Garden that does all right when I remember to tend it." "It looks peaceful," Tabitha said, meaning it. After weeks of judgment and shame in Watsonville, the isolated ranch seemed like a sanctuary. They rode down the hill, and as they approached, Tabitha noticed details she'd missed from a distance: curtains in the windows of the main house, a rocking chair on the porch, a small fenced area that might have been a kitchen garden once, now overgrown with weeds. Isaac helped her dismount when they reached the yard, then tied his horse to the hitching post. "Let me show you the cabin first," he said. "Make sure it suits you." He carried her pack as they walked the short distance to the cabin. It was simple but sturdy, 1 room with a small covered porch. Inside, she found a narrow bed with a straw mattress, a table with 2 chairs, a small cook stove, and a chest of drawers. A faded curtain partitioned off one corner, which she discovered contained a washstand and chamber pot. "Ranch hand who lived here left 2 years ago," Isaac explained. "After my wife passed, I couldn't manage the place alone, but I couldn't afford to keep him on either. Sold most of the cattle, just kept enough to get by. It's clean," Tabitha observed, noting the swept floor and dust-free surfaces. "Widow Jenkins comes by once a month to help me tidy up. Been trying to convince me to remarry." A shadow crossed his face. "Haven't been ready for that." Tabitha set her pack on the bed. "This will do fine, Mr. Kincaid." "Isaac," he corrected. "If we're going to be working together, might as well use first names." "Isaac," she repeated, testing the feel of it. "And I'm Tabitha," he nodded. "There's a pump out back for water, outhouse too. I'll bring firewood for the stove. You'll take your meals with me, but this place is yours. Door has a lock." He gestured to it. "Keys in the drawer there." The mention of the lock reassured her. He was being careful about proprieties despite the unorthodox situation. "What work will you expect of me?" she asked directly. "Cooking, mostly. Some cleaning. The house has gotten away from me since Sarah died." He looked down at his boots. "Nothing too strenuous, especially as your time gets closer. And after the baby comes, we'll figure that out then," he said, just as he had the night before. "Got a cradle in the attic of the main house. Sarah was expecting when she—" He cleared his throat. "Well, it's yours if you want it." The simple kindness of it, offering a cradle that must hold such painful memories for him, brought unexpected tears to Tabitha's eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "Thank you," she said. "I don't know how I'll repay such kindness. Just good, honest work is all I ask." He stepped toward the door. "I'll let you get settled. Come to the house when you're ready and I'll show you around the kitchen. Take your time." When the door closed behind him, Tabitha sank onto the bed, emotion overwhelming her. For the first time in months, someone had offered her kindness without judgment. She placed her hands on her belly, feeling the baby move. "We might be all right after all," she whispered. By mid-afternoon, Tabitha had unpacked her few belongings and familiarized herself with the cabin. True to his word, Isaac had brought a stack of firewood and filled the water bucket from the pump. He'd also left her a small oil lamp and matches. When she walked to the main house, she found him on the porch, whittling a piece of wood. He stood immediately, brushing shavings from his pants. "Hope the cabin's comfortable," he said, holding the door open for her. "Very, thank you." The interior of the house surprised her. Though clearly a bachelor's residence with boots by the door and a rifle mounted above the fireplace, it was tidier than she'd expected. The main room served as both parlor and dining room, with a pine table, 4 chairs, a settee by the fire, and a rocking chair. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that suggested Isaac was better educated than the average rancher. "Sarah loved to read," he explained, following her gaze. "Taught at the school in Watsonville before we married." "I remember her," Tabitha said suddenly. "Miss Woodward. She taught me when I was 12. A smile touched Isaac's face, softening the weathered lines. "That was her, smartest woman I ever knew. Too smart for a simple rancher like me, but she didn't seem to mind." He led her to the kitchen, a bright room with windows facing east and south. A cast-iron cookstove dominated one wall, a sink and pump another. Cupboards held dishes and cooking utensils, all organized with care. "I'm not much of a cook," Isaac admitted. "Been living on beans and bacon mostly, but there's a garden out back with some vegetables, and I've got chickens for eggs. Smokehouse has ham and beef." Tabitha ran her hand along the well-scrubbed counter. "I'm a fair cook. My mother taught me well." "Good." He shifted awkwardly. "There's 2 bedrooms upstairs, mine and, well, the other one was going to be the nursery. Don't go in there much now." The sadness in his voice was palpable, and Tabitha wondered what tragedy had taken both his wife and child. But it seemed too personal a question for their first day. "When would you like me to start?" she asked instead. "No rush. Get yourself settled today. Maybe start tomorrow with breakfast. I can make supper tonight," she offered. "As thanks for taking me in." He looked about to refuse, then nodded. That'd be welcome. As Isaac returned to the porch and his whittling, Tabitha explored the kitchen more thoroughly, taking inventory of what was available. She found flour, sugar, salt, coffee, and other staples. In the garden, she discovered carrots, potatoes, and late-season tomatoes. The chicken coop yielded half a dozen eggs. By the time dusk fell, she had prepared a simple but satisfying meal: ham with roasted potatoes and carrots, fresh biscuits, and fried apples she'd found in the root cellar. The aroma filled the kitchen as she set the table. Isaac washed up at the pump outside before coming in, his hair damp and slicked back, his face freshly shaved. He'd changed his shirt too, she noticed. "Smells like heaven," he said, hanging his hat on a peg by the door. They sat across from each other, an awkward moment of silence stretching between them before Isaac bowed his head. "Lord, thank you for this food and for bringing Miss Holloway safely to this place. Amen." The simple grace touched her. It was the first time anyone had thanked God for her presence in months. "This is good," Isaac said after his first bite of ham. "Real good. Thank you." She watched him eat, noting how he savored each bite as if it were a rare treat. "How long have you lived here?" "6 years. Bought the place after the war, was in the Union Cavalry." He took a biscuit. "Married Sarah 4 years ago, lost her 2 years back." "I'm sorry," Tabitha said. "Was it childbirth?" Isaac set down his fork. "Fever, she was 7 months along. Doctor couldn't save either of them." "That's awful." "I shouldn't have asked." "It's all right, been a long time now," he resumed eating. "What about you? Your family been in Watsonville long?" "All my life. My father was the blacksmith until he died 5 years ago. Mother took in sewing to make ends meet." "And the baby's father?" His question was gentle, not accusing. Tabitha looked down at her plate. "He was passing through with a cattle drive. Said his name was Thomas Brady. Said he loved me and would come back to marry me once he delivered the herd to San Francisco." She gave a bitter laugh. "I was naive enough to believe him." "Doesn't make you naive," Isaac said. "Just makes him a liar and a coward." She glanced up, surprised by the anger in his tone. "Most people say I got what I deserved. Most people are wrong." He pushed his empty plate away. "People make mistakes. Doesn't mean they should pay for them the rest of their lives." They cleared the table together, and Isaac insisted on washing the dishes while Tabitha dried them. It was a comfortable domestic scene, one that felt strangely natural despite their brief acquaintance. As darkness fell, Isaac lit a lantern to walk her back to the cabin. "I rise early," he said, "but there's no need for you to start at dawn. 7 o'clock is fine for breakfast." At the cabin door, Tabitha turned to him. "Thank you, Isaac. Not just for the work or the place to stay, but for your kindness. It's been in short supply lately." "People forget that kindness costs nothing," he said. "Sleep well, Tabitha." As she watched him walk back toward the main house, lantern swinging at his side, Tabitha wondered if she'd finally found a safe harbor in the storm of her life. Only time would tell if Isaac Kincaid was truly as good a man as he seemed. The days slipped into a comfortable routine as autumn deepened around Twin Pines Ranch. Tabitha cooked breakfast and supper, cleaned the main house, and tended to the revived kitchen garden. Isaac worked with the cattle, mended fences, and prepared the ranch for winter. They took their meals together, conversation growing easier between them as they learned each other's habits and preferences. 2 weeks after her arrival, the widow Jenkins paid a visit. Prudence Jenkins was a practical woman in her 40s with graying hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. She arrived in a small wagon, bringing preserves and a freshly baked pie. "So you're the girl Isaac's taken in," she said directly, looking Tabitha up and down as they stood in the kitchen. "Yes, madam," Tabitha answered, hands folded protectively over her now prominent belly. The widow's gaze softened. "Don't look so frightened, child. I'm not here to judge you. Lord knows I've faced my share of hard times. Isaac mentioned you lost your husband. Pneumonia took him. Left me with 3 little ones and a farm to run." She set her basket on the table. "People talked, of course, said I couldn't manage alone, said I should remarry or sell out, but I proved them wrong." Her eyes narrowed. "Just like you will." The simple vote of confidence meant more to Tabitha than the widow could know. "Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins. Prudence, please." And I'm glad Isaac's found someone to look after him. Man was fading away, alone in this house with his grief. I'm just working for him, Tabitha clarified quickly. Prudence gave her a measured look. For now, perhaps, but I've seen how he watches you when you're not looking. Tabitha felt her cheeks warm. I'm in no position, of course not yet, but time has a way of healing wounds and you both have plenty of those. She glanced around the kitchen. You've done wonders with this place already. Sarah would approve. The mention of Isaac's late wife sent a pang through Tabitha. The nursery upstairs remained closed, a silent monument to what might have been. Sometimes she caught Isaac staring at her belly with a look of such profound loss that it made her heart ache. You think it's proper, me being here? Tabitha asked suddenly. The church in Watsonville, proper, Prudence interrupted with a snort. What's proper about turning away a woman in need? No, child. What's happening here is Christian charity in its truest form. Don't let anyone tell you different. When Isaac came in from the fields for dinner, he greeted the widow warmly, and the three of them shared a meal that was livelier than any Tabitha had experienced at the ranch. Prudence told stories about her 3 children, now grown and starting families of their own in Sacramento. My oldest, James, wants me to sell the farm and move closer to them, she confided. Says a woman my age shouldn't be living alone. Will you go? Isaac asked. Prudence sipped her coffee thoughtfully. Maybe someday, but not yet. That land is where my Henry is buried. Can't leave him alone just yet. After the widow departed, promising to return the following week, Tabitha found Isaac unusually quiet as they washed the dishes. She's a good woman, Tabitha said, breaking the silence. The best, he agreed. Helped me through the worst days after Sarah died. Brought food when I couldn't be bothered to eat, made sure I kept living even when I didn't much want to. Tabitha handed him a plate to dry. You loved her very much, didn't you? Your wife. More than I knew how to say, he admitted. We were trying for a baby for 3 years before she finally caught. She was so happy. His voice cracked slightly. When I lost them both, it felt like the end of everything. I'm sorry, Tabitha whispered. It must be difficult having me here, a reminder of what you lost. He set the dried plate down carefully. At first, maybe, but now. His eyes met hers. Now it feels like something new, like the house is coming back to life. The intensity of his gaze made her heart beat faster. For a moment she thought he might say more, but he cleared his throat and returned to drying the dishes. The moment passed, yet Tabitha felt something had shifted between them. Some invisible barrier lowered just a fraction. As October turned to November, the weather grew colder. Isaac spent long days cutting and splitting wood, stacking it near both houses to ensure they'd have plenty for the winter. He insisted on building a fire in the cabin stove each morning before Tabitha woke, so she'd never rise to a cold room. One crisp morning, Tabitha was kneading bread dough in the kitchen when she heard a wagon approaching. Going to the window, she saw an unfamiliar rig coming up the drive. Isaac was out checking the northern pasture and wouldn't be back for hours. Wiping flour from her hands, she went to the door as the wagon stopped in the yard. A man and woman sat on the seat, both well dressed in the manner of town folk. With a shock, Tabitha recognized Reverend Whitmore and her mother. Martha Holloway spotted her daughter and nudged the Reverend, who helped her down from the wagon. They approached the house with the solemnity of a funeral procession. Tabitha, her mother said stiffly when they reached the porch, you're looking, well. Nearly 6 months pregnant now, Tabitha knew she looked anything but the slender girl who had left Watsonville. Mother, Reverend, this is unexpected. May we come in? Reverend Whitmore asked, his expression grave beneath his wide-brimmed hat. Reluctantly, Tabitha stepped aside, ushering them into the house she'd come to think of as her domain. The Reverend looked around with obvious disapproval, noting the single residence and the woman who clearly had made herself at home in it. "We've been concerned about you," he began, declining to sit when Tabitha offered. "Your mother has been beside herself with worry." "I left a note," Tabitha said, looking at Martha, whose eyes were fixed on the floor. "Yes, a very inadequate explanation for abandoning your home to take up with a man to whom you are not wed," the Reverend said. "Surely you understand how this appears." "I'm employed here as a housekeeper," Tabitha explained. "Mr. Kincaid has provided a separate cabin for my use." "Everything is proper." "Proper," Martha finally spoke, her voice tight with emotion. "My daughter, heavy with child, living under the protection of a single man. The entire town is talking, Tabitha." "Let them talk," Tabitha replied, surprised at her own boldness. "I've found kindness here, which is more than I found in Watsonville." The Reverend cleared his throat. "We've come to bring you back. The arrangements have been made with the home in Sacramento. There's still time to salvage your reputation. At the cost of my child." "No." "Be reasonable," Martha pleaded. "What kind of life can you offer this baby? No father, no name, living in sin." "I am not living in sin." Tabitha's voice rose. "And my baby will have everything it needs: a roof, food, and a mother who loves it unconditionally." "And when the child asks about its father," the Reverend challenged, "what will you say then?" "The truth," Tabitha answered. "That I made a mistake in trusting the wrong man, but that I never for one moment regretted the child that came from it." Martha stepped forward, grasping her daughter's hands. "Please, Tabitha, come home with us today. We can put this behind us." For a moment, Tabitha wavered. Despite everything, she missed her mother, missed the security of the life she'd known. But then she thought of the cabin with its cozy stove, of Isaac's quiet strength, of the life growing within her that deserved better than to be given away as if it were something shameful. "I can't," she said softly. "This is my home now." The sound of hoofbeats interrupted the tense silence that followed. Through the window, Tabitha saw Isaac riding into the yard, his expression changing from easy contentment to watchful concern as he noted the unfamiliar wagon. "The owner returns," the Reverend remarked coldly. Isaac entered moments later, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. His eyes went immediately to Tabitha, checking that she was all right before acknowledging the visitors. "Reverend, Mrs. Holloway, what brings you to Twin Pines?" "We've come for my daughter," Martha said. "To take her back where she belongs." Isaac's gaze returned to Tabitha. "That's her decision to make. You have no right to keep her here," the Reverend said. "I'm not keeping anyone against their will," Isaac replied evenly. "Tabitha is free to go whenever she chooses." "And if she chooses to stay," Martha challenged, "then she has a home here for as long as she wants it." The simple declaration, spoken without hesitation, made Tabitha's heart swell with gratitude. Isaac stood tall in his own house, neither apologizing for his charity nor backing down from the Reverend's implied accusations. "This arrangement is inappropriate," Reverend Whitmore insisted. "A single man and woman living together. She has her own cabin," Isaac interrupted. "And her reputation is safe with me. I made a promise to my late wife that I'd always try to do what's right. Helping someone in need is right." The Reverend's face flushed. "Your intentions may be honorable, Mr. Kincaid, but appearances matter." "The scandal, with all due respect, Reverend," Isaac said, "we're 5 miles from town. The only scandal is what people choose to make of it." Martha turned back to her daughter, tears welling in her eyes. "Is this truly what you want, Tabitha? To cut yourself off from your family, your community?" "The community cut me off first," Tabitha reminded her gently, "and you asked me to leave." "I was upset," Martha protested. "I didn't think you'd go to this." I found kindness when I needed it most, Tabitha said. I won't abandon that. The finality in her tone seemed to reach her mother at last. Martha's shoulders slumped in defeat. "You're as stubborn as your father was," she murmured, a hint of reluctant pride in her voice. The Reverend, seeing his mission failing, made one last attempt. "Consider the child, Miss Holloway. What future can it have here, born to an unwed mother, raised on a remote ranch?" "A future with love," Isaac answered before Tabitha could. "Which is more than some children get, even with two parents." His words hung in the air, a challenge that the Reverend chose not to meet. Instead, he placed his hat back on his head. "We'll take our leave, then. But remember, Miss Holloway, the path to redemption remains open, should you reconsider." "Thank you for your concern," Tabitha said formally. Martha hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace her daughter awkwardly. "Write to me," she whispered. "Let me know when it happens." "I will," Tabitha promised, surprised by the gesture. They watched from the porch as the Reverend helped Martha into the wagon, then turned the horses toward town. Neither spoke until the wagon had disappeared down the long drive. "You all right?" Isaac asked finally. "Yes," Tabitha said and meant it. "Thank you for standing up for me. Just told the truth." He looked down at his boots. "Meant what I said. You can stay as long as you want." She touched his arm lightly. "I know, and I'm grateful." After a moment, she added, "I should get back to the bread dough before it rises too much." As she returned to the kitchen, she felt Isaac's eyes on her, and a new warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the fire in the stove. The first snow came in early December, blanketing Twin Pines Ranch in pristine white. Tabitha woke to find the world transformed, crystalline and silent outside her cabin window. 7 months pregnant now, she moved more slowly, her body heavy and awkward as she made her way through the snow to the main house. Isaac had already lit the stove and was brewing coffee when she arrived, stamping snow from her boots on the porch. "Should have waited," he chided gently. "I was coming to walk you over." "I'm not an invalid," she reminded him, though she was grateful for the hand he offered as she stepped into the warm kitchen. "No, but that path gets slippery. Don't want you falling." His concern was evident in the furrow of his brow. As she prepared breakfast, Tabitha noticed Isaac watching her more than usual, his expression thoughtful. When they sat down to eat, he cleared his throat nervously. "Been thinking," he began. "With the baby coming in February, might be good to have someone here to help. Someone who knows about birthing." "Prudence mentioned she's attended births," Tabitha said. "She offered to come when my time is near." "That's good." He pushed his eggs around his plate, but was thinking more about someone staying here through the winter. Tabitha set down her fork. "Who?" "Your mother," Isaac said, meeting her eyes directly. "Might be a comfort to have her here." The suggestion stunned her. After the confrontation in November, Tabitha had written to her mother weekly but received only one terse reply. "She wouldn't come." "Might if I asked her, properly, I mean." He took a deep breath. "Been thinking about a lot of things lately, about how this place was meant for a family, how it's been too quiet for too long." Tabitha's heart began to race. "Isaac, what are you saying?" He reached across the table, his calloused hand covering hers. "I'm saying I care for you, Tabitha, more than I expected to, more than I thought I could after Sarah." "You feel responsible for me," she said, afraid to believe it could be more. "At first, maybe, but now." He squeezed her hand gently. "Now I wake up looking forward to seeing you, to hearing your voice, watching you move around this house like you belong here." Tears welled in her eyes. "The baby would be mine in every way that matters," he finished. "If you'd have me, are you proposing?" "Not doing a very good job of it," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile. "But yes, I'm asking if you'd consider becoming my wife, not right away. After the baby comes, when you've had time to be sure, but I wanted you to know my intentions are honorable, have been from the start." Tabitha's mind whirled. She'd grown fond of Isaac over these months, his quiet strength, his kindness, the way he never made her feel like a burden. But marriage? Could she trust her heart again after being so badly deceived? "You don't have to answer now," Isaac said, misinterpreting her silence. "Just think about it. And maybe consider letting your mother come for the birth. Might be a first step toward healing that breach." "I'll write to her," Tabitha promised, unable to commit to more just yet. Isaac nodded, accepting her caution. "That's all I ask." The snow continued through the day, keeping them both inside. Isaac retreated to his workshop off the kitchen, where he was building a cradle, not the one from the attic, which held too many painful memories, but a new one crafted from pine he'd cut on the property. Tabitha baked and cleaned, her mind churning with thoughts of Isaac's proposal. By evening, when they sat before the fire in the main room, she'd made a decision. "I'll write to Mother tonight," she said. "Ask her to come after New Year's." Isaac looked up from his book. "Good. I can fetch her from town when she arrives." And Tabitha twisted her hands in her lap. "About your proposal, I care for you too, Isaac, but I need to be sure it's not just gratitude I'm feeling." "Understand that," he said. "No rush, we've got time." "But I'm not saying no," she clarified. "Just not yet." The smile that spread across his face warmed her more than the fire. "That's good enough for me." Christmas at Twin Pines was a quiet affair, but Tabitha was determined to make it special. She baked cookies and pies, using precious sugar from their dwindling supply. Isaac returned from a trip to town with small gifts: a soft knitted blanket for the baby, a pretty blue shawl for Tabitha, and the surprising news that her mother had agreed to come in January. "Spoke to her myself," he said, hanging his snow-dusted coat by the door. "She was resistant at first, but when I explained that we're planning to marry after the baby comes, she seemed more receptive." "You told her that?" Tabitha asked, surprised. "Thought it might help," he admitted. "Was that wrong?" "No, just bold." She touched the soft wool of the new shawl. "Thank you for this. I didn't have anything for you." "Don't need anything," he assured her. "Having you here is gift enough." But on Christmas morning, Isaac found a package waiting on his plate: a new shirt Tabitha had sewn in secret, using fabric from one of her own dresses. The deep blue matched his eyes, and though the stitching wasn't perfect, he declared it the finest shirt he'd ever owned and insisted on wearing it immediately. They spent the day in comfortable companionship, sharing memories of past Christmases. Isaac spoke of his childhood in Missouri, of his parents who had died before the war, of Christmas services in a little white church not unlike the one in Watsonville. "You miss it?" Tabitha asked. "Going to church," he considered the question. "Miss the community of it sometimes. The singing. But found my own way to worship out here, I suppose. Nature's as good a cathedral as any man built." "I've always found comfort in church," Tabitha admitted. Until they turned you away," Isaac finished. "That wasn't God's doing, just people's." "Do you think we could have a service here?" "Nothing formal, just a remembrance of what the day means." In response, Isaac fetched his Bible from the shelf. Together before the fire, they read the Christmas story, and Isaac's deep voice recited the Lord's Prayer. It was simple, far from the elaborate service Reverend Whitmore would be conducting in Watsonville, but Tabitha found it more meaningful than any church service she'd ever attended. That night, before walking her to the cabin, Isaac paused on the porch, looking up at the star-filled sky. "Been thinking," he said. "Doesn't make sense for you to keep trudging through the snow every day, especially now." "I don't mind," Tabitha assured him. "Still, weather's getting worse. Might be safer if you stayed in the main house. There's the spare room upstairs." The nursery, Tabitha thought. The room he never entered. Would that be proper? she asked, though the idea of not facing the cold walk each morning and evening was appealing. "More proper than you risking a fall," he said, "and your mother will be here soon, all appearances maintained." Tabitha considered it. "All right. I'll move my things tomorrow." The following day, Isaac carried her trunk to the main house, setting it in the small room that had been intended for his child with Sarah. The room had been cleared of whatever baby furnishings it once contained, now housing only a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a rocking chair by the window. "Sarah picked that chair," Isaac said when he saw Tabitha running her hand along its smooth arm. "Said every nursery needs a good rocker." "It's beautiful," Tabitha said. "Are you sure you want me in this room? It must hold many memories." "Time those memories did some good," he replied. "Room should be used as intended, for a baby." That night, sleeping under the roof of the main house for the first time, Tabitha felt a new sense of permanence, as if another step had been taken in the journey from reluctant guest to something more. From the room across the hall came the sound of Isaac's deep, even breathing, a comfort in the dark of the winter night. January brought bitter cold and more snow, deep drifts that isolated Twin Pines Ranch from the outside world for days at a time. Isaac spent hours keeping paths clear, ensuring the livestock had access to water and feed. Inside, Tabitha prepared for the baby, washing and folding the small garments she'd sewn from old linens, arranging them in the chest of drawers in her room. "Not long now," Prudence Jenkins observed during one of her visits, eyeing Tabitha's prominent belly. "Baby's dropped. Could be any time in the next few weeks. My mother should arrive next week," Tabitha said, trying to mask her nervousness. "If the road's clear enough. Good timing." "First babies often take their time." Prudence patted her hand. "Don't fret. Women have been doing this since Eve. Your body knows what to do." Despite the widow's reassurances, Tabitha grew increasingly anxious as her time approached. Her back ached constantly and sleep became elusive. Often she would find herself in the rocking chair at night, looking out at the moonlit snow, wondering what kind of mother she would be. On one such night, a soft knock at her door startled her. "Yes." Isaac opened the door just enough to see her. "Thought I heard you moving about." "Everything all right. Just restless," she admitted. "The baby's active tonight." He entered the room cautiously, as if crossing some invisible boundary. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her belly. Tabitha nodded, and he knelt beside the rocker, placing his large hand gently on the swell where his child, no, not his. She reminded herself where her child grew. The baby kicked against his palm, and Isaac's face transformed with wonder. "Strong," he whispered, "like its mother." The intimacy of the moment made Tabitha's breath catch. Isaac remained kneeling beside her, his hand warm through the thin fabric of her nightdress, his eyes full of an emotion she was afraid to name. "I've been thinking about your proposal," she said softly. His gaze lifted to her face. "And I think I'd like to accept, not just out of gratitude or for the baby's sake, but because—" She hesitated, the words unfamiliar on her tongue after months of guarding her heart. "Because I believe I'm falling in love with you, Isaac." For a moment, he seemed unable to speak. Then he took her hand in his, pressing it to his lips. "I never thought I'd hear those words again," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Never thought I'd feel this way after Sarah, but you brought life back to this house, to me." He rose, still holding her hand. "I'll speak to the preacher in town as soon as the road's clear. We can be married before spring, if that suits you." "It does," she said, and was surprised by how right it felt. Not a compromise or a concession, but a choice, perhaps the first truly free choice she'd made in her life. Isaac bent to kiss her forehead, a gentle, chaste gesture that nonetheless sent warmth flooding through her. "Get some rest," he murmured. Dawn comes early. As he left her room, closing the door softly behind him, Tabitha felt the baby settle as if it too were satisfied with the turn of events. The following week, true to her word, Martha Holloway arrived at Twin Pines Ranch. Isaac brought her from town in the wagon, her trunk tied securely in the back. Tabitha waited nervously on the porch, one hand supporting her aching back. The reunion was awkward at first, mother and daughter regarding each other warily across the gulf of months and unspoken hurts. But when Martha's eyes filled with tears at the sight of Tabitha's swollen belly, something shifted. "Let me look at you," Martha said, taking her daughter's hands. "You're blooming." "I'm enormous," Tabitha corrected with a small laugh, "as you should be. The Holloway women always carry big babies." Martha glanced at Isaac, who stood respectfully to one side. "Mr. Kincaid has explained your arrangement. I can't pretend it's what I would have chosen for you, but it seems he's a decent man." "More than decent," Tabitha said firmly. "He saved us, Mother, me and the baby." Martha's expression softened. "Then I owe him my gratitude." She turned to Isaac. "Thank you for caring for my daughter when I failed to." "No thanks needed, madam," Isaac replied. "It's been my privilege." That night, after Isaac had retired to his room, Tabitha and her mother sat before the fire, the conversation flowing more easily between them. "Tell me honestly," Martha said, "are you marrying him because you have no choice?" "No," Tabitha answered without hesitation. "I'm marrying him because I love him. And the baby, he's willing to raise another man's child as his own. He says the baby will be his in every way that matters." Martha nodded slowly. "That's a good man then, better than most." She hesitated. "Your father would have liked him, I think." It was the highest praise Martha could offer, and Tabitha felt tears threatening. "I've missed you, Mother, and I you," Martha admitted. "Pride is a terrible thing, Tabitha. It kept me from reaching out to you, from accepting that you needed me." She took her daughter's hand. "I won't make that mistake again." 2 days later, in the cold gray of early morning, Tabitha's water broke. She called out, and both Isaac and Martha came running, finding her standing in a puddle by her bed, face contorted with the first real pain of labor. "It's time," Martha said, taking charge immediately. "Isaac, heat water and bring clean linens. Tabitha, back to bed. This is likely to take a while." Take a while it did. Through the morning and into the afternoon, Tabitha labored, walking when she could, resting between contractions that grew increasingly intense. Isaac hovered anxiously, sent on various errands by Martha, more hot water, more towels, a cup of broth for Tabitha's strength. By dusk, Tabitha was exhausted, her hair damp with sweat as she gripped her mother's hand through another contraction. "I can't," she gasped when it passed. "I can't do this anymore." "Nonsense," Martha said briskly. "Women have been doing this since the beginning of time. Your body knows what to do, just listen to it." Outside the bedroom door, Isaac paced, wincing at each cry from within. When Prudence Jenkins arrived, summoned by a ranch hand Isaac had sent to fetch her, he nearly collapsed with relief. "Thank God you're here," he said. "It's been hours." "First babies take their time," Prudence repeated what she'd told Tabitha earlier. "Let me see how she's doing." She disappeared into the bedroom, and the waiting continued. Night fell fully, and still Isaac paced, stopping only when Martha emerged briefly for more supplies. "How is she?" he asked desperately. "Progressing," Martha answered. "It won't be much longer now." Indeed, just after midnight, a new sound filled the house, the indignant wail of a newborn taking its first breath. Isaac froze, staring at the closed door until it opened and Prudence appeared, her apron stained but her face beaming. "Congratulations," she said. "You have a fine, healthy son." "A son," Isaac repeated, the word foreign on his tongue. "And Tabitha, tired but well, you can go in now." The bedroom smelled of sweat and blood, and something else, something new and indescribable. Tabitha lay propped against pillows, her face pale with exhaustion but radiant as she cradled a small bundle against her breast. Martha stood nearby, tears streaming unashamedly down her cheeks. "Isaac," Tabitha whispered when she saw him, "come meet your son." He approached the bed cautiously, overwhelmed by the moment. The bundle shifted and he caught a glimpse of a tiny red face, eyes screwed shut, a shock of dark hair plastered to a perfectly formed head. "Would you like to hold him?" Tabitha asked. Afraid but unable to refuse, Isaac held out his arms and Martha showed him how to support the baby's head as she transferred the tiny bundle. The weight of the child, so slight yet so significant, nearly brought him to his knees. This was what he and Sarah had been denied. This moment of pure wonder, this new life. "What will you call him?" Prudence asked, watching the tableau with satisfaction. Tabitha looked up at Isaac. "I thought perhaps Thomas, after my father." "Thomas," Isaac repeated, testing the name. "Thomas Kincaid, it's a good name." "Thomas Kincaid Holloway," Tabitha corrected gently. "Until we're married." Isaac bent to kiss her forehead, then the downy head of the baby of his son. "Not long now," he promised. They were married on the first day of spring, when the snow had melted and the first green shoots were pushing through the damp earth. The ceremony took place at Twin Pines Ranch, with Reverend Carson from the neighboring town officiating. It was a small gathering: Prudence Jenkins and her grown children, Martha Holloway, and a few neighbors who had come to know and respect Isaac over the years. Tabitha wore a simple dress of pale blue, made by her mother's skilled hands. In her arms, she carried 2-month-old Thomas, contentedly sleeping through his parents' wedding. Isaac stood tall in his best shirt, the one Tabitha had made him for Christmas, his eyes never leaving her face as they spoke their vows. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Carson declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." Isaac's kiss was gentle but full of promise, and the small gathering erupted in cheers. The celebration afterward was modest but joyful, a feast prepared by Martha and Prudence, music from a neighbor's fiddle, even a small cake with sugar frosting, a luxury in their remote location. "Mrs. Kincaid," Isaac murmured in Tabitha's ear as they stood receiving congratulations. "Has a nice sound to it." "Indeed it does, Mr. Kincaid," she replied, leaning against him, their son cradled between them. Later, after the guests had departed and Thomas had been settled in his cradle, now moved to Isaac's room, which would henceforth be their room, Isaac and Tabitha stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains gold. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. "A year ago I couldn't have imagined this life." "Nor I," he admitted. "After Sarah died, I thought that part of me was gone forever." "Do you think she would approve? Of us, I mean?" Isaac considered the question. "Yes," he said finally. "Sarah believed in love, in second chances. She would want me to be happy." He turned to face her fully. "And you make me happy, Tabitha. You and Thomas both." Inside, the baby began to cry and Tabitha smiled. "Duty calls." But Isaac kept hold of her hand. "I want you to know something. I may not be Thomas's father by blood, but from this day forward, he is my son in every way that matters. I will love him, protect him, teach him as if he were my own flesh." "I know," Tabitha said simply. "That's why I love you." As they went inside together to tend to their son, Tabitha reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from shame and rejection to love and acceptance, from the closed door of the church in Watsonville to the open door of a man who had seen her worth when others could not. The future stretched before them, full of promised seasons of planting and harvest, of joy and challenge, of watching Thomas grow alongside the siblings they hoped would follow. It would not always be easy, but they would face it together, a family forged not by convention but by choice and love. And in the years to come, whenever Tabitha caught sight of the Twin Pines Ranch from a distance, she would remember that day in autumn when, heavy with child and heavy of heart, she had found her way to a door that was always open,